of the sessioners we have today, remember to engage actively in this experience and be open with each other. And we want meaningful conversations naman. And there are no dumb questions. If you have a question, just ask, and people here will be able to answer naman, hopefully. And of course, your respect each other. So before we continue, I would just like to ask, kumusta ka mo? Like, kumusta kayo? Type in the chat, like, if you're still processing last week. Two, if you don't know anymore, or if you're ready for today. Three, okay. Seems like everyone's. I'm. Okay, nice, nice. Cool, cool. So everyone's at threes, and a few at twos. So nice. Oh, okay, nice. A lot of threes. All right. I think a lot of us are pretty much pumped up now. Though I hope everyone is safe currently with the upcoming typhoon Pipito. He's not our friend right now. So here's a quick timeline for today, for the entire session. So in day one, we had our own kickoff, the introduction to quantum computing. Day two, the fundamental math, and so on with the technical discussions we had. And now we're at day eight. So we're now transitioning from last week's lecture by Ao from at natural language processing to today. We'll be talking more on quantum natural language processing. So, and for the day nine, we'll have our lab day. So for our day eight, we'll be having a really good introduction to quantum natural language processing. So in this lecture will be discussed to you, provided to you by the wonderful Mr. Elmer Paramo. He's a senior science research specialist at the UST ASTI and the technical lead of the Itanong project. So right now, I'll love to give the floor to Sir Elmer. Sir Elmer,
Thank you, Sean.
please, sir, just share your screen when you're ready.
Okay. Sorry, I can't, for some reason, I can't enable my video, but that's okay. I'll just share my screen na lang then. Wait. Can you see my screen?
Yes, Sir Elmer. Yeah, we can see your screen.
Okay, thank you. So I'll get started. We only have less than 45 minutes to go. But I understand that you were able to watch my pre-recorded videos, no? So that's a continuation of our lecture about natural language processing. What we're gonna do for the rest of the time is basically just okay, sige. Let me see if I can. Ayun. Okay. Ay. Okay, now it's working. Yeah, what we're gonna do for the rest of the time is, yeah, introduction lang po talaga for QNLP. And may purpose naman yun. We're gonna have a laboratory or a workshop of the QNLP next week. So this is just maybe a theoretical or just an overview of quantum natural language processing. Theoretical introductions lang po. So for the agenda, introduction to quantum computing, just a review of what we have been studying so far, overview of machine learning, because I would say natural language processing is pretty much related to machine learning, because a lot of the techniques used in natural language processing comes from machine learning. And then gonna do QML. So we have to marry machine learning and quantum computing to come up with QML, applications of QML, and then we can consider QNLP as part of QML, if you think of it, because basically one of the applications of machine learning is natural language processing. So I would say one of the applications of QML is QNLP. And then I'll be providing some information about one of the or if not the only toolkit that I know of for QNLP, the Lambec toolkit by Quantinuum. And then I'm gonna say something about NLP with or using deep learning. That's actually my expertise. That's actually the course I'm currently teaching right now. And later on, I'm going to show you some opportunities for students and researchers to join our team. So yeah, I'll begin with this slide, classical versus quantum computing. So this is just a review. Classical computing versus quantum. The best way, for me, the best way to understand quantum computing is first you really need to have a baseline. And what's that baseline? Classical computing. It's really hard to understand something if you cannot compare it with another thing. So the thing is, the best way to really learn quantum computing is to have a solid foundation of how computing or how classical computing works. In classical computing based, we are dealing, it's based on classical mechanics and electromagnetism. So mostly it's deterministic. Quantum computing is probabilistic. It's based on the principles of quantum physics, which we will see in the next slide. Then classical computing uses classical bits, zeros and one, binary states, and Boolean logic. So there's a lot of technologies that we can use to elicit or to come up with those two values. We can use optical, we can use magnetic, we can use other other ways, even semaphores, we can use them as binary states. And then for quantum computing, it uses quantum bits called qubits, which is a superposition of zeros and one, no? And then in terms of hardware, classical computing is mostly composed of CMOS circuits or silicon-based transistors. But for hardware, there's a lot of options you can think of. You can choose from. Some companies use superconducting qubits, some use trapped ions, some use photonics. I think University of Tokyo is using photonics. Some use neutral atoms, and there are other possible ways of as long as you're working with quantum objects, right? And then for in classical computing, it's consists of central processing units processing in a sequential manner, whereas quantum computing consists of quantum processing units processing in parallel. So that's basically one of the major advantage. There are some algorithms that for the classical case that you can only do in parallel, but for the quantum case you can do that in series, I mean. But in the quantum case you can do that. There are some algorithms that can parallelize those computation. Now going back to the principles of quantum physics, these are the principles of quantum physics or quantum mechanics that quantum computing is trying to leverage on. The first one is superposition. Then we have interference, and then the next one is entanglement. Entanglement plays a big role in QNLP, by the way. Superposition, basically in superposition, quantum states can be in both Ket0 and Ket1 at the same time. So it's possible that we can represent 2 to the n states, where n is the number of qubits. As you can see there, it can be represented as a point in the Bloch sphere. So I think these are already been covered. No, the next property of quantum computing is interference. So there are constructive and destructive interference. You can see there that's a representation of the double slit experiment where constructive and destructive interference leads to some quantum states having high probability of measurement. And the next one is entanglement. Entanglement is another concept in quantum mechanics, which means that a pair or group of qubits exists as a quantum state such that their properties are correlated, even if the qubits are separated by a long distance. Of course, this has already been discussed, the quantum logic gates. You have the X gate, the Y gate, the Z gate, the Hadamard, the phase S gate, the phase P gate, and then the pi over 8T gate, and its corresponding matrix representation. I just would like to emphasize that gates are just basically matrices. And matrices, what can matrices do? They can actually do transformation. Like in this case, if you have that qubit there, this one, the X1, if you apply a gate there, it can be transformed or it can point to another direction. So that's basically how quantum computing works. How about machine learning? So before I go to QNLP, let me just discuss what machine learning is. And later on, I'm gonna combine these two concepts, quantum computing and machine learning, to come up with quantum machine learning. So machine learning is this field. This is a branch of AI. Okay, this is a branch of AI wherein we wanted to learn from data. Okay, so basically it's the doing programming without explicitly basically it involves learning from data. Okay, and it is composed of there are three types. You have the supervised, unsupervised, and reinforcement learning, and there are some other types wherein you can let's say combine these two techniques. But supervised learning, the important point there is you're working with labeled data sets. Labeled data and supervised learning generally can be used for two types of tasks. One is classification and the other one is regression. So this is parang you're just predicting based on a labeled data sets. So there's a training involved here. So your data sets have label, and then based on the label, you are going to study the patterns, no? If your label of if your target variable is a discrete variable, then that is considered classification. Basically, you're predicting either one of the labels in the target variable. If your target variable can be considered as a continuous random variable, then that problem now becomes a regression. Like, for example, if you're predicting temperature, predicting heights, predicting weights, predicting exact number, so that is regression. So that falls under supervised learning. But if you have a data set that is unlabeled and you just wanted to see its distribution, its behavior, how they are clustering when you graph it in an n-dimensional space or two-dimensional space. So that is unsupervised learning. In unsupervised learning, you can do clustering, or you can also use unsupervised learning for dimensionality reduction. And then the third classification of machine learning is what we call reinforcement learning. In reinforcement learning, you have here an environment and an agent. The agent will try to navigate the environment and the agent probably will do some actions, and the environment will give it feedback. And for each action, it will go from one state to another. So the idea here is to come up with a sequence of actions that will maximize your reward. And that is called a policy. So in reinforcement learning, you wanted to come up with an optimal policy so that your agent can navigate the environment in a beneficial manner. Like you can use this for game playing, for navigation, for this has a very varied application. So this is machine learning, and machine learning, you can work on several machine learning algorithms. You have some algorithms under supervised learning. So you have support vector machines, random forest, k-nearest neighbors, naive Bayes, logistic regression. For regression, you can use linear regression, polynomial regression. For unsupervised learning under clustering, you can work with k-means, DB-scan, or hierarchical clustering. And then there are in reinforcement learning, you can have Q-learning and policy gradient. Those are some of the algorithms that you can use for machine learning. But you would need a lot of data and your computing power for machine learning. But one of the algorithms that has performed very well in the past years is the use of neural networks. Okay, so what is a neural network? This is a mathematical abstraction inspired by the human brain, wherein you will have their nodes and edges. So basically, it's a graph. It's a network wherein it's a mathematical construct wherein you can train this so that it will be able to output some prediction. In a neural network, you have the input layer and the hidden layer and the output layer. So basically, how it works is that the input layer will accept your data sets, your input, and then it will be processed by the hidden layers to come up with a prediction at the output layer. But how do we train these neural networks? How do we assign the weights in these neural networks? So there is, when you assign for example, when you input data sets, those data sets will be converted into numbers, okay? Into numbers. So those numbers, they are arranged in an array called a vector. So as you can see here, you have 3 numbers here. So you can consider this as a 3-dimensional vector as an input. And then each of these connections, they are called weights or parameters. They are called weights or parameters. Those weights or parameters are just numbers also that you'd like to multiply to the input, okay? And or you'd like to integrate with the input. Basically, it's a multiplication, okay? And then when you multiply that, you add a bias, and then you do some, you input that, encode that into a nonlinear function. So basically, that's what is happening here. So there's a number here, and then you multiply it by a weight, and then after multiplying that, you add all those connections together, those products together to come up with a number here. So basically, you're taking the linear combination of these inputs and then input that into a nonlinear function. So there's a lot of computations here, but basically what is just happening here is you can consider this as a vector multiplied by a matrix. Okay, and then this fully connected layer here can be converted, can be represented as a matrix. So basically, this is just a series of matrix multiplication. And how do we change, or how do we update the parameters? You would need to define what we call a loss function. A loss function basically is that function that somehow quantifies how far is your prediction to the true value. Okay, that is your loss function. So if, for example, from the start, you would initially assign random weights, or you would initially assign weights randomly to this edges, okay? So when you assign the weights randomly, when you do the prediction or when you do the computation, it's not going to predict the actual value of the ground truth or the label, no? But that, since you have already, since you have just assigned the weights randomly. But the thing is, once you have already here in the output layer, there should be a number here, and then compare that to the true value, that would characterize, or that would somehow be your loss function. How far is your prediction to the actual value? And then since you know the distance between the actual value and your prediction, you can somehow update the weights here. Or probably I need to tweak the weights here so that, for example, if your output value is 5 and the actual number is 10, perhaps I would increase the value of the weight so that when I do the prediction, when I do the calculations again, it will be nearer to the actual value, which is 10. So basically 10 and 5, you just need to come up with a function or an expression that would somehow measure how far is the prediction with the actual value. And that is what we call a loss function. An example of a loss function is the mean squared error, or the mean squared. Basically, you just get the difference between the prediction and then you square them. Okay. The importance of squaring them is that when you consider that as a function, it will become a parabola. And parabola are differentiable because we use calculus, we use derivatives to minimize. What the objective here is to minimize the loss function. We wanted to come up with the minimum value of that loss function. That's the idea, and that is the motivation of training a neural network. Okay, so I hope that that's making sense to you. Basically, that is the summary of machine learning. Machine learning is just a game of optimization. When I say optimization, we wanted to minimize that loss function. And that loss function is just a characterization of how far is your prediction to the true value. But there are techniques actually to train. Training meaning updating your weights, okay? So basically, in machine learning, you need to come up, those algorithms would need to come up with a machine learning model. And a machine learning model is just a set of weights and biases. Okay? They're called parameters. Okay, in this case, let's take, for example, this neural network on your screen right now. So you have your 3 nodes here as input. You have 4 nodes for the first hidden layers, and then 4 nodes for the next hidden layers, and then 4 nodes for the last hidden layers, assuming that there are only 3 layers in this neural network, and then you have the output layer. Okay, so basically your data input will be converted to a number, and then it will be multiplied by this weight, and then all of the weights after multiplication will be added together, and then that number will be put into some kind of a nonlinear function. And then the number here will be passed down to the next, and then eventually to the output layer to come up with the prediction. But the thing is, how do we come up with these numbers? Initially, randomly. But after that, when we already have this prediction, we need to make sure that these numbers are updated. Okay? So these numbers are your weights. They represent your machine learning model. In this case, you have how many weights? That's 3 times 4. You have 12 here. 4 times 4, 16. 4 times 4, 16. And then you have another 4 weights here between the last hidden layer and the output layer. You have 4 parameters here. So 4 plus 16, that's 20, plus 16, that's 36, plus 12, that is 48. There are 48 parameters, or there are 48 weights here. Sometimes they add biases. No. Okay, but for simplicity, I'm just considering the weight. So in this case, you have 48 parameters. Why am I counting this number of parameters? Because this is how we characterize a machine learning model, by the number of its parameter. Like, for example, a simple linear regression, you only have 2 parameters there, like the slope and the y-intercept. Those are the values that you need to tweak so that you can come up with a linear regression line. In this case, you have 48 parameters. So the more parameters you have, the better, or the more complex or the more flexible your model will be. Just as a comparison, the Chat GPT that you are familiar with, that you might be using, uses a neural network like this, okay? But more complicated than this. It's called a transformer. The T in the Chat GPT is called a transformer. It's a type of neural network. By the way, there are several kinds of neural network. This one is the basic one. This is the first one that you need to learn. This is called the multi-layer perceptron or a feed-forward neural network. But there are other types of neural network, okay? You have CNN, convolutional neural network for images. You have RNN for sequential data. LSTM, a more sophisticated type of RNN. And then you have transformer, which is better than all of the what I have mentioned. And it's the neural network being used by ChatGPT. Now, I mentioned that because in a transformer, like for example, in transformer or GPT-3, you have 175 billion parameters as compared to this simple neural network that only has 48 parameters. So that's my point. I'm just trying to point to you to the importance of parameters. Okay? In ChatGPT, you have 1.75 billion parameters, but what can it do? It can actually generate coherent language. This can only predict a specific thing, like for example, predict temperature or predict a value that you can use for regression. Okay, so basically there are levels of model capacity. The more parameters you have, the more powerful, the more accurate that model will be. But it's gonna cost you a lot in terms of computational power and the amount of data required. Okay, so that's basically is machine learning, no? And if we're gonna use machine learning is actually a branch of artificial intelligence. Okay, because there are other AI processes or AI techniques that's not considered machine learning, like for example, expert systems or logic-based or rule-based approaches. Those are, but most of the AI we know nowadays uses machine learning. Specifically, there's a specific type of machine learning that solely leverages the power of neural networks, deep neural networks. We call that deep learning. And most of the technology or AI that we use nowadays is powered by deep learning. Now, let me go back to quantum computing, okay? Now, that's machine learning, but do you think we can use quantum computing for machine learning? In machine learning, as I mentioned, since you are working with, like, look at this. Basically, this is just matrix multiplication, right? This is just training a neural network. It's just a series of matrix multiplication, okay? And in quantum computing, we work with matrices. We consider them as gates, right? So in quantum machine learning, you can be classified into 4. Like for example, in terms of type of data and type of algorithm, we can have classical algorithm and using classical data. That's the thing that we're used to. But we can also use classical data for quantum algorithm, or using quantum data for classical algorithm, which will take a lot of time, and then or quantum data using quantum algorithm. Now, let's see how quantum machine learning works. I've already mentioned to you basically what classical machine learning is, learning from data. So you have data, you wanted to predict something, you need to define a loss function. Okay, we need to define a loss function. So, and then update those, based on the loss function, update the weights. And finally, it's gonna be an iterative process so that when you already have that set of weights or that model, that when you use that model to predict something, it's very close to the actual thing. Okay, that's the idea behind machine learning. Now we can translate that idea into quantum computing and then use the quantum computing process to do machine learning. So that is QML. So in QML, basically you use variational circuits. So these are circuits that have tunable or variational parameters. So in this, for example, you have this quantum state or data. Basically, it's just like let me go back to this. As you can see here, this is just matrix multiplication here, and here. So you can use that idea of the classical neural networks to do quantum machine learning, wherein you have your quantum state here, this is your data, and then you do some rotational within the x-axis for tunable parameters or your variational parameters. So there's gonna be a series of computation here, quantum computation here, and at the end, gonna do the measurement. So that measurement, it's gonna be just like your output layer here. Okay, so in this circuit, theta 1 and theta 2 are your variational parameters, and r sub x and r sub y are your rotations around the x and the y axis respectively. So this is the basic QML architecture. So you have there your U of theta. So this is your quantum computation. Basically, this is just like a neural network in the classical sense. And then you do a measurement and compare that to y. And then you have to define a cost function just like what we do in the classical machine learning, and then update the parameters and do the quantum computation again. So basically, this is the basic QML architecture. Now, this is the QNN, or the in the quantum world, there is a neural networks counterpart we call QNN. So quantum neural network is similar to the classical neural network, but the difference is you have a data here, you have to convert or you have to encode that data into quantum state. Okay, that's the difference. And then you apply what we have here, just a series of computation, and then at the end you do some measurement. So in classical machine learning, we have parameters. Okay, those parameters are the ones that make up your model or machine learning models. In QML, you also have tunable or variational parameters. So applications of QML, it's since there are a lot of, like, for example, a lot of area, a lot of domain that would require massive amount of computations and massive amount of data. Like, for example, in drug discovery or in chemistry, wherein there's a vast space, in the chemical space is so vast that it's really hard. It would take a lot of time for classical machine learning approach to find the best combination. So you can apply QML in medical science or in chemistry, and for molecule simulation for drug discovery. So this is one of the fields that QML can really be used. Another applications of QML is in finance. No, you can use Monte Carlo simulations for derivative pricing and risk management. No? So in quantum computing can actually accelerate simulations using quantum amplitude estimation. That provides faster and more accurate pricing for complex financial derivatives. And then it can reduce computational time for scenarios like value at risk and conditional value at risk. These are finance terms, no, that I think that is computationally hard to do if you're going to do it or using classical approaches. Yeah, it can also be used, QML can also be used for portfolio optimization. Like, it solves combinatorial problem for asset allocation using quantum optimization algorithms. Basically, like what I mentioned a while ago, machine learning basically is just optimization. It's minimization of the loss function. It incorporates constraints like transaction costs, regulatory requirements, and risk tolerance into quantum enhanced models. It reduces computational overhead for large-scale portfolio rebalancing, making real-time optimization feasible. So this lecture, it's very less technical than my previous lecture about mathematics. So basically, it's more of theoretical thing. Now let's go to quantum natural language processing. So based on what we have discussed so far in terms of NLP, or in terms of like language, based on Au's lecture and the pre-recorded lecture that we have you watched, no? I think you kind of have some idea now of what NLP is and how to tame language. As you can see, based on my lecture, language is very ambiguous. It's very hard to actually understand for humans, much less for computers. So perhaps we can use quantum computing to analyze or to make sense of language. So I'm going to begin with the introduction to QNLP. So it's a bit complicated concept, but I'll try my best to simplify it as much as I can. So in QNLP, we use qubits or quantum states to represent the words. Okay. It's a little bit different from how NLP is being approached by or being done nowadays using deep learning. Okay, this one is a different approach. I am more of a I'm gonna be honest with you. I'm more of a deep learning approach type of NLP than a quantum computing approach for NLP, because first, I think this is a very niche domain. I mean, when I do a search, when you research for natural language processing, most of the approaches nowadays uses deep learning or deep neural network or transformer based. Those are the things, and it's very successful because of ChatGPT. QNLP, I think this field started 2021 with Quantinuum, and then with Bob Koech of Cambridge or Oxford University. And that's the only it's not a very wide area of study, as when I tried to explore this area. But it's still worth, doing, and there might be some complementation, like for example, complementation between this approach and the deep learning approach. But before I digress further, let me just introduce you the approach of QNLP. So in QNLP, we use qubits or quantum states to represent words. So you can see there's DISCO-CAT. It means distributional, compositional, categorical. So this is the framework, the main framework that was used for quantum NLP. Distributional meaning it uses vector space. Okay. I'm not sure if you can still remember the second video that I made about vector space or the distributional hypothesis. Basically, words are represented there as a vector, word vector. And it can be geometrically, you can represent that into a vector space. So that's the distributional part. Okay, so the distributional meaning it can be represented as a vector in a vector space. Now, compositional for DISCO-CAT, compositional, it means that we're dealing with grammar. Okay, like for example, black hat, it means that it is composed of the word black and hat, but black hat in itself is a whole entity. Okay, so that's what compositional means. In compositional, we deal with grammar. So DISCO-CAT, distributional, compositional, and categorical. Categorical, here we use categorical theory. This is a field of algebraic algebraic geometry, categorical theory. This is also a formalism in mathematics, okay, that can be used for QNLP. So DiscoCat serves as the foundational framework for QNLP for applying quantum computing to natural language processing. DiscoCat means distributional, compositional, and categorical. So in distributional, words are represented as vectors, and in a high dimensional vector space, I have already did a lecture on this in the in one of the videos that were sent to you. And then compositional, the meaning of sentence is derived from the meanings of the individual words. So that's compositional grammar. And there's syntactic relationships. Not only not only that a phrase is composed of words, it should be governed by certain rules or syntax. That's basically grammar. Like for example, we don't say hat black, but we say black hat, right? So there should be some rules which word should come first. And then it also use category theory or this framework so that we can map the grammatical structure of a sentence to mathematical operations on word vectors. So this is the approach of QNLP. It uses DiscoCat. So DiscoCat models language in a way that aligns syntactic structures or how words combine with semantic structure. So basically, as two building blocks of language is you have, of course, you would start with morphemes or the words, and then after morphemes, there's another layer called syntax. And then after syntax basically tells you how to arrange words together to form a sentence or to form larger blocks of discourse. And then another important aspect of above syntax is called semantics, which basically talks about the meaning. So QNLP is that field that applies quantum computing principles to natural language processing tasks. It leverages the quantum mechanical properties of superposition, entanglement, and yeah, it uses this DiscoCat as framework. Okay, the distributional words as vectors, compositional for the grammar and semantics, and then categorical to map the grammatical structure of the sentence for so that you can make mathematical operations. So the idea is kind of like what we are doing in the Itanong project, wherein you feed in a quantum computer with a lot of data sets, and so that using this approach, it would somehow come up with a model of how the words are being linked together using the DiscoCat framework. And then based on that, it would be able to answer your questions probabilistically. Like in this case, hey, is Chomsky is a famous linguist, an anarchist? It would answer 93% yes. So in the QNLP or in this approach, you use some diagrams, and then basically we take advantage of entanglement to represent this as diagrams as qubit state, and then do some quantum computation. So like for example, in this case, we wanted to represent applying adjective to a noun like black hat. And you can, since in this way, it will be able to use the principle of entanglement to entangle the word black and hat so that they would be taken as one entity or one unit, black hat. You can also apply other grammatical rules in English like subject, verb, object, sentence using this diagram. So the DiscoCat approach have this diagrams to represent words in sentences. Basically, this approach or QNLP is just a conversion of language, and it's quirks and complexity into quantum circuits. So there are ways to represent this, and there are some diagrams that you need to understand that uses a ZX calculus and spiders. Spiders are those diagrams that has been described here. Okay, but we're gonna take advantage of the details of this when we use the Lambek program. Okay, so we're gonna this is better than by doing some programming. So we're gonna do a workshop of this Lambek program. This is the most famous framework or Python framework for QNLP that we're going to use. And using that, we'll be able to make sense of this theory and this framework, the CQM, the DiscoCat, and the ZX calculus. Basically, it uses some diagrams, and these diagrams will be converted to a quantum circuits later on. And then we're going to run this using the Lambek Python framework. So yeah, this is just an overview of how quantum computing works. It's kind of different from the deep learning approach of natural language processing, because in this approach, we use the DiscoCat, or the distributional, compositional, and categorical framework of the language. So basically, once you already have these spiders, it can be converted into a quantum circuits, into parameterized gates. So Lambek, this is an efficient Python QNLP toolkit that we can use. It's released by Cambridge Quantum on the 2021, and then it converts any sentence quantum circuit based on compositional model and choices. The idea here is the reason why it's not become very popular, because in 2021, that's also the year where ChatGPT was released. So maybe there's a lot of interest in the ChatGPT than in QNLP. That is why this has become if this the power of GPT, or the popularity of GPT overshadowed the this research area, QNLP. Anyway, but this is still worth exploring, and we're gonna, speaking of exploring, we're gonna explore this in more detail next week. And with that, that concludes our NLP and QNLP lecture series. For the QNLP, the part there's gonna be a workshop next week. And I hope you have learned something today. Thank you. And for those who want to join or support our team, we really need some volunteers. We really need some members to help us and to actually advocate for quantum computing, quantum computing education in the Philippines. And in doing that, you will not only learn quantum computing, you will also learn related topics like artificial intelligence and NLP. So these are you can contact us through this email addresses for if you want to be our partners, partnerships at qcsp.ph. If you want to join us, membership at qcsph.ph, and for general inquiries, team at qcsp.ph. And that ends my lecture. Thank you for listening. Open for questions.
Thank you, Sir Elmer, for the wonderful lecture. No. So right now, everyone, if you have questions, please feel free to ask them. Sir Elmer here is ready to answer them. So you can chat your questions right here in the meeting chat, or you can use the Q&A. Okay, so Kyle Carlo Lasala has a question. What is the qubit complexity of the current QNLP frameworks?
With that, it really depends on the amount of data that you put in. But in this cases, I think it's less than the polynomial, or probably it's just a polynomial complexity, basically less than quadratic.
Right. Okay. Okay. Kyle Carl said, good to hear, Paul. Okay, so anyone, more questions? Just feel free. Sir Elmer here is just waiting for any questions. Or while you're waiting, I think I could ask a question, no? So, Sir Elmer, well, since we're still waiting for the others to type down their questions, so how, how accessible will QNLP or any quantum-related computing will be in the next 5 years compared to the current state of quantum computing?
It's a very hard question. I mean, I can't really say, because the thing is, every company is doing their best. It's kind of like a race for the best, the first one to achieve this quantum decoherence, or in, because like what I mentioned, they are using different hardware or different technologies. One is using photonics, one is using superconducting qubits. I don't know who will win the race, but I think since this is a race, they were really wanted, and I can see that every day there's been a very parang uh progressive, no, outlook with regards to quantum computing. So I guess in fearless forecast, in 10 years, in 10 years. Yeah.
Okay,
Now,
that's sige, sir, go continue.
yeah, let me go back to the question about qubit complexity. The thing is, in the context of natural language processing, like in the context of natural language processing, in the deep learning approach, kasi if you're going to do the transformer approach, the best, just like for example, one word is represented in many dimensions, no? And the good thing about the transformer is it can parallelize things. So but the better approach is, if you're going to, but that's for the classical approach, no? But since I mentioned that quantum computing is very good at parallelization, no? Like for example, if you're familiar with the transformer architecture, you have there the multi-head attention. The multi-head
Mhm.
attention, there's some representation of different. One word can be seen into different angles or different dimensions before processing. So that's multi-head attention. You can, in quantum computing, since a state can be represented to the n, no, qubits, no. So basically, you would have some a lot of representation for a single word. Like for example, if you represent a single word as a 10 qubit, then just one word, you can have that, you can have the 1024 dimensions already being represented at the same time. So I cannot really say, it really depends on the type of task when you ask me about computational complexity in the type of task. But the thing is, it is a logarithmically, I mean, if it can be done exponentially in the classical sense, then it can be done just in polynomial time for quantum sense, in the quantum case. If it can be done in the classical sense, like polynomial, then it can be it will be reduced logarithmically in the quantum case. So because of that, of that logic, we're in, you have a lot of data representation in the quantum in quantum computing sense.
Okay. Thank you, Sir Elmer, no? So we have actually a bunch of questions that just came in. So I'll read to you the first one. So would it be feasible to try quantum NLP via Qiskit in an average device?
I think yes. Meron akong nakitang I saw one Qiskit implementation ng quantum pero just a simulation no of the quantum of how a quantum computing works. Yeah, it's feasible.
So, pero sir, for the like sake of everyone and for clarification sake, so how would you define an average device?
Like yung current laptop that we're working on right now, no? Na basta may GPU.
Mhm. Okay. Okay, sir. So we have another question. What particular NLP tasks are usually the current focus of QNLP research?
Ah, sentence classification, named entity recognition, sentiment analysis. Basically, those are some of the focus of because I haven't really seen a machine translation using QNLP approaches. Mostly what I see is like dependency parsing, like coming up with a like for example, there's a sentence, you can break it down into its constituent form, like for example, noun, phrase, and so on. That's one of the tasks that QNLP is good at, and also sentiment analysis. What else? Named entity recognition, and parts of speech tagging. So those are some of the tasks. Basically, classification of the parts and classification of the sentence as a whole.
Okay. Okay, that's really interesting, no? Now, sige, let's move to the next question. How can one solve NLP problems using QNLP while also considering quantum decoherence?
That's a good question. Basically, we really need to manage error correction. Like, I think that is still feasible since most of since we can do iterations and then most of the we are really working is in probabilistically because in like for example for me the most important part of NLP is language modeling. Okay, because in language
Mhm.
modeling it's so versatile, you can use it for summarization, text generation, machine translation. Basically it all boils down those are just downstream tasks of language modeling. And in language modeling, what do we need? We need to come up with a probability distribution of the next word. Okay? Since we're working with probability, okay, then perhaps we can do away with, we can consider the quantum decoherence. So that's my take on that question.
Thank you, sir, Elmer, for that one. Now we have another question. So I'm already a fourth year student, Paul, and I want to become part of the research industry. Do you have any recommendations, Paul, where I can possibly work with QNLP or quantum computing general? Smiley face. Baka gusto niyo, sir, invite sa ASTI.
Yeah, sa ASTI or sa QCSP, sa ASTI meron kaming quantum computing laboratory. No, yun pa lang yung nakikita kong but there are also other opportunities abroad. Pero in the Philippines, I would say na kami pinaka-active, no? Yung QCSP, yung pinaka-active and with the help of the UST, of course, no?
Mm.
So yan, we really need to, pero ganito lang, no? Ito lang lagi yung advice ko. Dito, fourth year ka pa lang naman, I really have to beef up on your mathematics para at least understand mo talaga. Kasi etong mga concept na to like linear algebra and probability and statistics, those are very important mathematics behind this new technology. And once you understand them, like for example, no, like usong-uso ngayon ChatGPT. Iba kasi pag naiintindihan mo how ChatGPT works at that, you can get a lot of from it, no? Kasi alam mo kung paano mo ano yung prompts mo to get a lot of because you know under the hood, you know how it works eh. You know kung paano yung ano. So basically, mas maganda kasi like if we're dealing with technologies like quantum computing and artificial intelligence, we understand the foundational building blocks of these technologies. And I would say na yung mga foundational building blocks na yon, ang ano nun, ang pinaka-linchpin nun is math, no?
Yeah, it's always math talaga. But basta the more you ano like the more advanced the computer science topic is, the more you're related to math. So sir, since you're recommending naman to this student na mag-work on her or his math, what would you recommend for her mag-practice like like what resources would you recommend her to read? Like for linear algebra tapos sa calculus, especially calculus and linear algebra.
Aside from the math kasi, if you are also parang inclined to do programming, better to parang complement it with programming, like coding, like yung NumPy lang, so that you would see and think in higher dimensions, no? Like maraming may mga ano eh, may mga sobrang dami na kasing ano, tawag doon, resources. I cannot, sige, magbibigay lang ako ng mga ano yung mga ano, like yung 3 Blue 1 Brown sa YouTube as a very
Mm.
okay. Okay din yung ano, medyo kung gusto mong medyo light at medyo ano, yung StatQuest. May ano, medyo nakakatawa yon yung StatQuest. What else? Yung 3 Blue 1 Brown. Tapos nanonood lang ako ng mga, sabi nga ni Au, yung mga Stanford lectures or MIT lectures. MIT lectures kung gusto niyo yung ano. Yung Stanford lectures meron yung sa CS, mga CS, no? Pati yung Harvard CS50, that's also a good resource. Harvard CS50, Stanford CS lectures, at saka, yun, basically yun yung mga ano ko eh, lagi kong pinapanood. Because I also teach. The thing is, the reason why I teach kasi para at least ma-reinforce kasi aside from I'm a researcher sa ano, pag nasa ASTI kasi ako, halimbawa sa ASTI, most of the time I do parang people management, project management, and admin staff na instead of parang focusing more on the technical stuff, medyo nakukulangan ako. And that is why I accepted yung mga load like teaching mathematical modeling, natural language processing, data science courses, mga ganun. Kasi before I can teach them, I really need to understand them from the ground up so that I'll be able to teach them effectively. So ganun yung ginagawa kaya ano, dapat lagi kang ano, watching YouTube videos, reading books, yun yun yung mga motivations, yun yung mga ano ko. It's saka ano lang kung interest rin talaga kasi.
So wonderful, sir. So sige, let's move on to the next question, no? So one question is, are the tools we are going to use in the lab next week, like I think he or she meant like including a simulation?
Yes, in
Mm.
that includes simulation. Basically, you have a sentence, you're going to do representation, you're going to convert that representation into quantum circuits and then run that quantum circuits basically.
Okay. Cool. Cool. The next question, sir. So I wanted to do research in quantum computing in general. Maybe try to develop a quantum algorithm. Do you have any recommendation for the current gaps of the state-of-the-art quantum technology?
So, yung masyadong malawak yung current gaps of state of the art of quantum, lalo na quantum technology, no? Pero siguro mag-focus lang tayo dun sa quantum algorithms, no? Yan, madami pa yan. That is a very wide and an active area of research din, ano? Pero sobrang dami pa kasi like for example, marami tayong mga algorithms sa classical case that when you think about it, baka meron siyang quantum counterpart.
Mm.
that is one thing that you can look into. Kasi yung algorithm pa lang, it's a very parang interesting na parang how do I say it? Ang laki kasi ng like may pag nag-aaral ako ng let's say mga different algorithms like yung mga kunyari yung mga searching or sa mga sorting algorithms, doon pa lang ang dami ng mga techniques na lumalabas na that is also doon pa lang medyo parang interested na siyang aralin, baka may magandang way to so basta magbasa lang kayo ng papers kahit sa AI space o machine learning space, madaming mga paper. Tapos ang nangyayari kasi is evolution and revolution, no? Like for example, if you're gonna use like hello?
Yes, sir. Nandito
Sorry.
kami.
Oh, sorry. I thought I lost you. Ah, maganda kasing history ng NLP. I wanted to show you sana history ng NLP. Parang from one revolutionary paper to another. So titingnan nila yung mga the best way to dagat is baka huwag tayong makontento sa current technology. Like for example, ano ba ang ngayon technology transformer, no? Baka meron pang mas maganda eh. Like for example, may mga iba pang mga alternatives like yung Mamba na lumabas din ngayon. And then yung mga Kolmogorov,
Mhm.
Arnold's network. So those are alternative way of so ang dami kahit doon pa lang sa neural network na space or doon sa ang dami na doon na that probably you can use quantum computing. Ito na nga yung ipa-post ko sa inyong problem. Yung kanina pinakita ko, iba yung approach ni QNLP sa approach ng NLP ngayon using deep learning. Magkaibang approach. How can you marry them and how can they be complemented? So perhaps
Mhm.
you can use parang advantage ito over the other. So advantage not you can marry them together. So that's one thing that we can look into. Yun lang, pero madami tayong mga ideas na it's really a why. That's why yun yung reason kung bakit ang mga tao ay nagpi-PhD. They wanted to fill those gaps. Yun.
Ano, sir, like, speaking of quantum algorithms, like you said, I wondered tuloy, is there any research already on quantum pathfinding? Or like, what's the state of research done on quantum pathfinding?
Ay, sorry, di ako ganun ka-familiar. Is that related to TSP?
Yung ano ba, sir, like, pathfinding, like going from point A to point B, like doon sa Google Maps. Kasi I think there's gonna be a lot of applications naman yun.
Oo, meron nga sa office like yung parang related sa traveling salesman problem, no?
Mm.
Yung mga gano'n like sa
Ah,
logistics. Yeah, may mga ginagamit kami na may isang kaming use case to sa isang project that I am handling like yung sa logistic ng isang company na
mm.
parang more on traveling salesman. Pero hindi pa kami gumagamit ng quantum algorithms. Yung lang, we use reinforcement learning for one, yung isa
Mhm.
doon. Isang approach na ginagamit namin and then mga transformer-based neural networks din.
Oh, okay, interesting, no? Now, related naman, sir, sa research, no? Since nag-mention naman, like, these students, they wanted to try to get into the research space in quantum computing. From being a college graduate, what do you think should their next step be after graduating?
From a college graduate, if they really have interest in this, kasi I think this is going to be the next big thing, no, after. Kasi since AI is all the rage, this is something na worth exploring, no. That is why kaya nga din kami, parang lahat kami dito sa QCSP, no, very much into this kahit na wala kaming we're doing this for volunteer because we can see the potential in this in this field, yun yung like, you can work parang if this is your interest, no, sa computer science, no, kung talagang gusto niyo yung field na yun. Or if not, doon sa applications nito. Like for example, material science or even in health, in biology, lahat yun kasi pwede ma-applyan ng AI and quantum computing. Kailangan meron ka lang keen parang you really need to think outside the box din, no? Hindi yung mga lang. So, it cuts across several industries, eh. Kahit nga sa sociology, pwede rin 'to, no? Like yun nga, yung binanggit mo, yung pathfinding, you can represent that as a network, yung mga ano, hindi lang sa iba't ibang domains, ano, you can,
Mhm.
and then you can basically it all boils down to searching, eh, no? Parang gano'n.
Yeah.
Searching the best path, parang gano'n. It can be in the form of database. Basta the thing is, ito yung mga importanteng ano, you need some representation. You need first of all, you really need to understand to grasp the problem. And then you have to abstract that problem. Dapat may abstraction, okay, para ma-simplify mo. Pag may
Mhm.
abstraction na, you need some
Yeah.
representation. You need to come up with some conventions, like yung mga ano na yun, and then you already have some representation. Now you can do some algorithms or can doon sa representation na yon, and then validate the data. You can do some optimizations. That's the idea, eh. Yun yung ano. Basically yan, mathematical modeling.
Okay. Okay, that's okay, very cool, no? So, sige, sir. So, does anyone have another question? Like, Sir Elmer here is still ano? Pero I suppose there are no questions na. So, Sir Elmer, thank you so much for the
Thank you.
lecture. Thank you for introducing to us ano, quantum NLP, tapos as a preparation naman for next week's session. Now, so let me share my screen. Now we're close to finishing naman, no? So before we proceed, I'm gonna ask, kumusta kayo guys? So we're gonna do a temperature check. So on a scale of 1 to 9, how are you after the lecture? Ooh, 9. 5, okay. 7, 6, 3. Ooh, that's a really widespread naman. Okay, 7. Okay, cool. Cool. So, oh, may nag-chat. 3. Cool. So, we are about to end na this session, no? But before we go, I'd like everyone to turn on their cameras para we can do a photo op. Remove pin. Yes, let's turn on our cameras. One. Okay. Keep him coming, guys, para we have a picture. Mm-hmm. 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 28. Wala, no one else will open na ba? So okay, wait. Parang may mag-open pa. Okay. So, for those who open their cameras, no, let's do like ganito, yung one compute na sign. So, 3, 2, 1. 3, 2, 1. Ayun. So, okay, you guys can turn off your cameras na po. So, thank you everyone ulit for joining us today in this lecture series, the 8th day. And next week, you'll have your labs naman. So, before everyone goes, this is the attendance code and this is the link for the attendance. I'll type it out. So, if you have no more further questions, thank you so much for joining us for today. I already added the URL to the chat. If it doesn't work, just let me know. And the attendance code for today is 7236.